My name is Alexis Folgaris, the RTM moderator. As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the
Recording in progress.
This evening, I've asked our moderator pro tem, Catherine LaBalbo, to lead us in the pledge. Will everyone please rise as Ms. LaBalbo recites the pledge? Thank you. As all members have received a copy of the minutes from the December 2022 meeting, the reading of those minutes will be omitted. Are there any proposed changes to those minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes stand adopted upon unanimous consent. I'd like to recognize Frederick Lee, the chairman of District 1, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. I stand before you this evening to honor Dean Lee Goss, who passed away on December 21st, 2022. In addition to being a loving husband, father, teacher, and mentor, Dean was a member of the District 1 RTM for over 39 years. He was one of the longest serving members of the RTM, beginning his service in 1962. Many of you have known him to be my predecessor as chairman of District 1. He used his experience as both a professor and chairman of the architectural department at New York Institute of Technology to make Greenwich a better place. He served on an inspiring 14 building committees. As an avid gardener, he planted seeds to reap and share his harvest. As a member of the RTM, he planted different seeds and mentored many to volunteer and get involved in town activities, especially the RTM. I would like to share with you a story that his daughter Judy told me. It exemplifies Dean's love of the RTM. One day, Dean and a friend were out walking and approached a now current RTM member. As she was working in her garden, they bonded over their passion for gardening, after which Dean proceeded to sell her on the merits of joining the D1 RTM. He taught her so much about how the RTM works and served the town of Greenwich, noting always that the body was a nonpartisan arm of town government. While this member no longer lives in D1, she continues to be on the RTM to this day. Thus, Dean's legacy continues. This is just one of many examples of Dean's continued service to Greenwich. On a personal note, I can say it was a privilege to serve alongside Dean. He walked the talk and believed in Greenwich and the importance of giving back. Thank you, Judy, Wendy, Martha, and Dean Jr. for sharing your dad with us. I request that these comments be added to our January RTM minutes, and I respectfully request a moment of silence in honor of Dean Lee Goss.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise so that we may honor Dean Lee Goss? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to the call for tonight's meeting. I notified the membership that I would recommend the following organization of our agenda based on the reports received. Consent items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13. Combined 14 and 15. Separate 4, 10, 11, and 12. And item 3 has been withdrawn. Pursuant to our rules, I will designate items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13 to our consent calendar. And if those items remain on our consent calendar, we will have no committee reports and no discussion on the items, and all you will hear is what I'm about to say. Item 1 is the appointment of Stephanie Johnson to be nominated to the Board of Ethics for a term expiring June 30th, 2025. Item 2 is the nomination of Kenneth Greenberg to be a member of the Board of Ethics for a term expiring June 30th, 2025. Item 5 is the nomination of Arthur Delmhorst to be a regular member of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring October 31st, 2026. Item 6 is the nomination of Frank Barata to be a regular member of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring October 31st, 2024. Item 7 is the nomination of Mark Parry to be an alternate member of the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring October 31st, 2023. Item 8 is the appointment of Martin Kagan to be a regular member of the Historic District Commission for a term expiring October 31st, 2023. Item 9 is the appointment of Jason Brown to be a regular member of the Old Greenwich School Building Committee. And item 13 is an appropriation in the sum of $24,500 to be added to a town clerk RTM budget for professional services and staff overtime expenses. Are there any objections to the designation of those items to the consent calendar? Okay, hearing none. Peter, we're going to put up the voting window. It would be for the consent calendar item. So once we get that up there, we'll open the voting window. Okay. Will our members please start casting your vote? The consent calendar voting 1-minute voting window is open. The voting window is now closed. Okay. The result of the consent calendar, and we'll show it in a minute after I announce it, is 195 in favor, 3 opposed with 0 abstaining. Those items have carried. Peter, if you could please show the screen for everybody. There you go. Okay. That brings us to our combined calendar items, which are 14 and 15. In order to combine items, we need a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a motion to suspend the rules to combine for voting purposes items 14 and 15? It has been moved and seconded to combine for voting purposes item 14 and 15. The motion to suspend the rules is not debatable and does require a 2/3 majority to pass. Is there any objection to suspending the rules to combine for voting purposes items 14 and 15? Hearing none, the motion to suspend the rules is adopted upon unanimous consent. Item 14 now comes before us. May we have the resolution for that item, please? And I believe it's to be offered by Stephen Walco, the chair of the GHS Vestibule Building Committee. We'll be offering a substitute resolution. Is that correct? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the RTM. This is a substitute resolution for item 14. Resolved that the sum of $500,000 being the same is hereby appropriated in the quote bond fund with bond proceeds end quote GHS entrance for a total appropriation of $3,500,000 for the design and construction of the security vestibule together with site work and related landscaping located at Greenwich High School.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 14 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports from the committees that considered this item? It's going to be Education, Finance, and Public Works. So if you guys just want to come down to the front and queue up, that would make things go faster. Beginning with Kimberly Blank, Chairwoman of our Education Committee.
Hi, good evening. We took up and voted on items 14 and 15 together. Item 14 is a request for $500,000 to be added to the $2.75 million already appropriated for the Greenwich High School security vestibule. Christina Downey of the Board of Ed and the GHS Vestibule Building Committee presented this item to us and answered questions from the committee. Ms. Downey explained that the building committee had initially settled on a larger design, which they then put out to bid. When the bids came back at $4 million and the building committee did not want to come back to the town with such a large additional request, they went to the Board of Education, which voted to scale back the design of the project. The building committee significantly reduced the square footage of the vestibule to reduce construction costs and the cost of HVAC for such a large space. They believe that the new design, while less grand, will meet the primary function of safety and security while still providing a more attractive entryway for the high school. Ms. Downey explained that the new estimate of $3.25 million includes some items that hadn't been part of the initial project request. These include $135,000 for an owner's rep and $375,000 in landscaping costs that the P&Z required as part of the approval process. They are asking for an interim appropriation so that they can put the project out to bid as soon as possible. Assuming they receive all necessary approvals in time, they hope to start construction as soon as school lets out. Construction will take longer than the summer months, and the GHS administration has plans to manage student arrivals during the construction process. The Education Committee voted 11-1-0 to approve the appropriation and the bonding resolution. District 4 voted no, saying that he believes that his constituents in the Byram District are much more concerned about the Western Middle School fields and getting them operational again. He also said that based on his observation of the New Lebanon project, he is skeptical about whether all of the landscaping and tree plantings that are promised as part of the project will actually happen. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Brooks Harris, Chairman of our Finance Committee, and Jenny, Craig Amundson, who's the Vice Chair of Public Works, will be giving the presentation next, and he's online.
Thanks. A lot of the comments were similar in finance. We had Steve Walco join us and walk through the path that this project has taken to come back to us. The questions were answered very thoroughly. Steve actually anticipated most of the questions and went through all that stuff. We had some brief follow-ups, and all the answers seem relatively satisfactory in terms of things like soil testing and the extra buffer in case there are cost overruns, and Steve had good responses to all that, et cetera, as well as talking about the timing and trying to get this done for the most part while students are away during the summer. So that discussion went very well. We spent some time focusing on the financing and the bonding, as you might expect out of finance. And Pete Minarski presented and discussed the terms of the financing, very consistent with the other bonding we've done under our modified pay-as-you-go program. And that seemed all in order. Finance approved this 12-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker on this item is Craig Amundson, who's the Vice Chair of the Public Works Committee.
Hi, good evening, all. I'll be real brief because I think Kimberly really covered most of what went on in all the meetings. I actually presented for the Public Works Committee meeting because I happen to be the RTM Public Works liaison to this particular building committee, so I've been involved with it. The only thing I would add is that, you know, the focus of this project is the security aspect of the vestibule. And unfortunately, with the first design, we did get a bit surprised by how far off the bids were from what we thought they would be. And truthfully, a lot of that had to do with the COVID-19 supply chain problems, as well as a significantly increased cost for the special glazing, which are very much part of the security and safety issues for this vestibule and something that's mandated by the state of Connecticut. The cost of that glazing was actually, under this current bid, $755,000. Ultimately, we reduced the size of the vestibule design from about 2,000 square feet down to 1,098 square feet. And while it is not as grand, it is still very functional and will certainly be an attractive addition to the Greenwich High School community, as well as the town of Greenwich as a whole. We took a vote on this item, and we voted on both items 14 and 15 together. Our vote was 11-0-0 with District 1 absent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debate on item 14. We had one speaker who had signed up for both 14 and 15, which was Christina Downey. Is she here or is she? Oh, come on down, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sorry. My name is Christina Downey. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Education. I am also the Board of Ed liaison to the Greenwich High School Entryway Vestibule Building Committee. And I just wanted to thank you all for taking up this item tonight. The Board of Ed supports this project wholeheartedly. We were obviously very disappointed when the bids for the initial design came in so high, but we went to the building committee and asked them to go back and see what they could do to fit within the budgeted amount. They did. Speaking as a member of the building committee, we put a lot of time in. We did our best to what we thought we could do. This is our best effort. It also, as people have mentioned before, it does include some unforeseen items such as landscaping and an owner's rep, which really is about the $500,000. So the board really supports the project. We hope that you all will support it as well for a safe and secure and attractive entrance to our high school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is the only person, Ms. Downey is the only person who signed up to speak on item 14. So we will move to the second item within our combined calendar, which is item 15, the bonding resolution for this item. May we have that resolution, Mr. Walco?
Madam Moderator, item 15 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of $500,000 bonds of the town to meet a portion of the capital budget appropriation for the construction of the Greenwich High School vestibule for fiscal year 2022-2023, and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowing for such purpose, and it is as it appears on the call.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 15 has been moved in second and is now before us. Mr. Bergweger, would you like to go first, because you are the only new committee report for this item? And then I can swing back and see if anyone else would like to add, if they didn't already combine their comments with item 14.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM and guests. Legislative and Rules Committee took this up last Monday. We had Leslie Moriarty of the BET and also a member of the Building Committee, and Karen Fasuliotis to help us. Some of what we discussed has already been mentioned. I'll just try to deal with some things that we talked about. One is wondering why the price of the matter had gone up. The estimates were exceeded by more than $1 million when the bids came in. But we were told that the Board of Ed was the project was redesigned to reduce costs, but the Board of Education asked that designers focus on security. So we had a discussion about ballistic glass, and the question was asked whether it could withstand a shot from a howitzer, and it suggested that probably wasn't going to happen. So the appropriation is an additional $500,000. We voted 12-0-0 on legal order and 12-0-0 on the merits.
Thank you very much. Do any of the other chairs, Education, Public Works, or Finance, have anything else to add? Or are you comfortable with what you said in 14? Okay. We do have one speaker again. Ms. Downey, would you like to, you're going to pass. Okay. That's it. We're now going to vote on combined calendar items 14 and 15. As a reminder, a bonding resolution does require a majority of the entire membership, which would be 116 people, to vote in favor of it for it to pass. So if you could put the combined calendar item. Okay, the voting window is now open. If you approve of that appropriation of the bonding, you would vote yes. If not, you would vote no. The voting window is now closed. Okay, I have the result of those combined calendar items, 14 and 15. Those in favor, 204, opposed 7, abstaining 2, and we will show that vote for you right now. Okay, That now brings us to our separate calendar, which are items 4, 10, 11, and 12. Mr. Broadhurst, I believe you have a motion to offer.
Moderator, I move that we have a limit to debate per speaker of 2 minutes per speaker.
Per motion?
Per motion, yes, per motion. Thank you.
Are you going to include something for the proponent and principal opponent?
Yes. Sorry, 2 minutes per speaker with 5 minutes for the proponent and 5 minutes for the principal opponent.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Sorry.
So Mr. Broadhurst is offering a motion, 2 minutes per speaker per motion. That means that if you've signed up for example, in item 10, the legislative and rules amendment and the item, you could speak on both, so 4 minutes of total, and 5 minutes for the proponent and principal opponent, the latter to be determined by the moderator. Motion to limit debate, or is there a second? Okay. A motion has been moved and seconded. A motion to limit debate is not debatable and requires a majority, 2/3 majority to pass. We're going to put that up there. No, hang on. Technical, you have to move closer, I have to move closer. Okay, so it should be coming up. Okay, the Broadhurst motion of 2 minutes per speaker per motion and 5 minutes for the proponent and principal opponent. 2/3 majority to pass. You may cast your vote. Can we get the timer up there? It says 0 right now. Thank you. The voting window is now closed. Okay, so I have the result of the Broadhurst motion to limit debate to speakers. Those in favor, 182, opposed 15, abstaining 2. That item has carried. Peter, could you please show the vote on there? There we go. I believe Adam Rothman also has a motion to offer.
I make a motion that we limit our committee reports to 5 minutes per speaker, obviously.
Okay, so that would be 5 minutes for the, I think there are 3 or 4 committee reports for each item. Okay, so no more than like 20 minutes or 25, depending on, in total. Okay, is there a second to that? Okay, that motion has been moved and seconded. Once again, a motion to limit debate is not debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. So this would be the Rothman motion to limit committee reports to 5 minutes. If we could put that up there. We're going to vote on this first and then, so could we get the, okay, there you, could we set the timer please to 1 minute? Thank you. The voting window is now closed. Okay, I have the result of the Rothman motion to limit committee reports to 5 minutes each. Those in favor, 155, opposed 33, abstaining 5. That motion is carried. So for when the committee chairs give their reports, we will put a 5-minute timer up there, and that will be your allotted time. That brings us to item 4 on the call, the first of our separate items. And I believe Bob McKnight, the chairman of the Appointments Committee, please. And if you could please read the resolution before you move to postpone.
Good evening. Resolved that the following named person nominated by the Board of Selectmen be appointed a regular member of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, R5, for a term expiring October 31st, 2026.
Thank you. May a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 4 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. Mr. McKnight, would you like to offer your motion?
Yes. As William Galvin was unable to be interviewed at the Appointments Committee January 10th meeting, at this time, I make a motion to postpone this nomination.
Thank you. That motion being offered on behalf of a committee does not require a second. We can adopt this motion upon unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the Appointments Committee recommending postponing this item to our March meeting? Yes. Yes, I thought he said March. Is there any objection to postponing this item to our March meeting? I'm sorry, did I hear a yes? Okay, so if there is an objection, we may not take it up by unanimous consent, so we will have to vote on that. Could we prepare this will be a new slide. It would be Appointments Committee, motion to postpone item 4 to the March meeting. That does require a majority to pass. Okay, when you're ready. Okay, Peter, if you could just put that up on the screen and then we'll. Okay, all those in favor of postponing the motion to March, item 4, please vote. Those opposed, also please vote. The voting window is now closed. Okay, I have the result of the Appointments Committee motion to postpone item number 4 to our March meeting. Those in favor, 195, opposed 9, abstaining 6. That item is carried. Item number 4 will go to our March meeting. If you could please show the vote. There you go. Okay. That currently leaves us with 3 remaining separate items to consider this evening. Items 10, 11, and 12. I think we're all very much aware of the interest in items 10 and 11. Item 12 is the acceptance of a grant for the Greenwich Senior Center, and I was contacted by a member, Mr. Stephen Katz, I don't know where you are, if you could come to the front, who would like to offer a motion to suspend the rules and take up item 12 before we consider items 10, which will then allow us to focus the balance of the meeting on items 10 and 11. Would you like to offer that motion, sir?
Yes, I would like to offer a motion to suspend the rules to take what I think is a non-controversial item, item 12, before items 10 and 11, for which we can sit back for the evening to observe.
Thank you. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to suspend the rules and consider taking up item 12 out of order. The motion to suspend the rules is not debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Is there any objection to suspending the rules and taking up item 12 out of order? We can try it by unanimous consent, but if anyone objects, we'll do a record vote. Happy to do so. Is anyone objecting to that? I don't hear any objections. That motion, Mr. Katz's motion, is adopted upon unanimous consent. Okay, that brings us to item 12. Mr. Katz, would you like to come back and read the introduction, read the motion? He's our chairman of the Commission on Aging.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm the chair of the Commission on Aging, and item 12 is resolved that the town of Greenwich is authorized to accept a grant in the amount of $300,000 from the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development for the renovation of the Greenwich Senior Center located at 299 Greenwich Avenue. It's further resolved that the first selectman is authorized to execute all agreements and documents associated with such grant, including the assistance agreement, affidavit of commercial transactions, statutory waiver of notice and hearing, certificate of applicant, declaration of land use restriction covenant, environmental certificate, indemnity agreement, escrow agreement, negative pledge agreement, and such other documents as may be necessary to accept the grant. And it is as it's listed on the call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 12 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports of the committees that considered this item? It's going to be Kip Bergweger, Brooks Harris, and Allison Solar. So if you want to scunch a little closer, you can. Brooks Harris, Chairman of our Finance Committee.
Thank you. We took this item up. Mr. Katz has been before us several times in the recent past to talk about what's going on at the senior center. And he's made very good presentations and has thoroughly answered all the questions the group has. In this case, the funds are going to be used to convert the existing kitchen into a recreation space, and a new kitchen is planned across the building from the existing kitchen. Members had various questions about whether this would be enough money to do it, what happens if the money isn't sufficient. Mr. Katz had sufficient good answers to all those questions, and the Finance Committee was favorably disposed. Apologies, I won't be able to fill 5 minutes. We voted 12-0-0 to approve this.
Thank you very much. Allison Solar, Chairwoman of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. We also had Steve Katz join us at our meeting last Tuesday night. And he presented this item and explained everything that Brooks just said. He also gave us an insight because on Monday night, L&R had met and had some issues with the contract, and he detailed those, that they were missing some schedules, the original application, and that the contract states that the building cannot be used for anything other than the senior center. The latter is an issue because part of the building is leased to the Greenwich Arts Council upstairs. He explained that there are 3 ways to address this: change the description of the property of the senior center to specify that's only the lower level on the first floor in the contract, or have the state approve the lease to the Greenwich Arts Council, or change the language of the contract. He also explained that our assistant town attorney, Amina Ahmad, would be contacting the state to work out this issue, and that he expected this to either be all worked out before tonight's RTM meeting, or that L&R committee will be referring it back to give more time to be completed and then voted in March. But spoiler alert, you all got a copy of the amended document. So it's good news for the senior center. The vote is 10-0. Our vote was 10-0-0 with districts 3 and 4 absent, and I'm sure that was not 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bergweger, you have the legislative and rules report, which we're all very excited to hear if we're going to be amending this, or if you're going to be referring it, or what you're going to do. But I did want to say, I believe behind you, for anyone who does not, or we have limited copies of the revised agreement, which I believe you are referring to in your report as the amended agreement. We made some copies. If you want to pick one up as well, that would be so that you can reference. You're welcome to do so.
Okay. Legislative and Rules took this up last Monday evening. We had Amina Ahmad, Assistant Town Attorney, and Karen Vasiliotis, a member of the BET. As several people have already noted, Mr. Katz had made some points to Health and Human Services. He did not attend our meeting because I'm on the Commission on Aging as well, and theoretically should know something about this. But it was a grant application to the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. But the documents that were sent to us to look at had a number of factual errors, such as stating that that the building was only for the senior center, and in addition to leases to the Arts Council, the Commission on Aging meets there as well. So we would be tossed out as soon as the documents were signed. So Amina Ahmad, Assistant Town Attorney, dealt with the attorney who was representing the state, and all of the factual errors that were included in these documents were corrected. And those documents have now been amended, and they have been substituted for the documents that were in the original call that went out. So you don't have to go through the amendments because they're now in the documents. However, almost all the documents have exhibits and schedules attached to them. And when we looked at them, they were all blank, which was a little hard to decide what to do with them when you can't, your document refers to something on Exhibit B and there ain't no Exhibit B. So we had a problem with that. However, after talking with the town attorney, we determined that one way to deal with this, because the agreements were now final, we could modify the resolution and give the first selectman a authority to sign, but only after the exhibits and schedules have been completed, and finalized and approved by the town administrator and the law department. So I will make a motion in a few minutes, if not sooner, to amend the resolution to that effect. We had a special meeting to deal with this because last Monday, we didn't have any documents that were correct. So we met again this evening. Districts, I believe 1 and 12 were not absent, were absent. We voted on the amended resolution, legal order and merits 10-0-0.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bergweger. You are free to offer your amendment. And I said, if anyone wants a hard copy, there are some limited hard copies of what Mr. Bergweger is going to be reading if you don't already have it on your phone.
This is an amendment. Legislative rules moves to amend the resolution for item 12 by amending the second paragraph. And I will read, first of all, that it says, it begins, it is further resolved, but the word further is a typo, so we correct that typo. Then we add at the end of the resolution the following language. Provided that the documents are in the form presented to the RTM, including documents substituted in the call at its January 17, 2023 meeting, and provided that all exhibits and schedules attached to the documents have been finalized and approved by the town administrator and the law department. So once those documents have been finalized and approved, the first selectman has the authority to sign all of the documents under this amendment.
Thank you very much. That motion being offered on behalf of a committee does not require a second. Is there any debate on the LNR motion to amend item 12? Is there any objection to that amendment? We can adopt that upon unanimous consent. Otherwise, we're happy to take a record vote. Is anyone objecting to that? Okay, hearing none, the motion to amend item 12 as proposed by Legislative and Rules stands adopted upon unanimous consent. Debate on item 12. I don't believe anyone has signed up to speak on this item. So Peter, if we could put the 1-minute voting window for item 12. If you are in favor of the $300,000 grant for the senior center, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. The 1-minute voting window is open. The window is now closed. Okay, the result on item 12 is 202 in favor, 1 opposed with 4 abstentions. That motion has carried, and we'll show you the vote. There you go. That now brings us to the main event, the main attraction, items 10 and 11. Before we begin with these items, I'd like to remind everyone about our rules of decorum and civility. I recognize that these 2 items have generated a lot of interest, and that's a good thing. Engagement is great. What's not good and what won't be tolerated this evening are ad hominem attacks. People have every right to debate the merits of the issues, but no one has the right to levy personal criticisms or attacks at someone. Robert's rules is very clear. Under no circumstances can a member attack or question the motives of another member. And I'm going to quote directly from one of my favorite books, page 372, section 43:21. The moment the chair hears such words as fraud, liar, or lie used about a member in debate, she, it says he, but I feel it should be she, must act immediately and decisively to correct the matter and prevent its repetition. So if any of you are planning to use fraud, liar, or lie in your comments, now would be a very good time to edit your remarks before you are called to the podium. Okay. And second, we do have a lengthy number of speakers lined up this evening. You're going to have 2 minutes per speaker per motion. I do recommend looking up at the TVs periodically to watch the timer. There will be a 2-minute timer up there. Once the timer hits 0, that's it. I'll say thank you very much. The mic goes off and you go on your merry way. So if you can, be respectful of the time limit. And also, if you have heard your remarks offered already, you might want to consider passing. So with all that, yes. Thank you, Mr. Shankman. Perhaps people from their applause will interpret what you have said and take that into consideration when their name is called. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 10 is a $500,000 grant from the Center for Technology and Civic Life for the Registrar of Voters. May we have that resolution, please? Mr. DeCaro, will you be reading it? Okay. Fred DeCaro, the Republican Registrar of Voters.
Okay. Resolved that the town of Greenwich is authorized to accept a grant in the amount of $500,000 from the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Said grant to be used by the town's registrars of voters for the purpose of planning and operationalizing safe and secure election administration infrastructure in the town of Greenwich, as further described in the agreement between the town of Greenwich and the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Such grant shall become an appropriation that the comptroller shall add to the appropriate accounts upon approval by the Board of Estimate and Taxation. It is further resolved that the first selectman is authorized to execute the attached grant agreement.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 10 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports from the committees that considered this item? We'll need a 5-minute timer clock someplace up there. On the side someplace, if we could get it. Hang on, Mr. Harris, I don't want to cheat you out of any time. There's a, perfect. All right, you're good. Brooks Harris, Chairman of our Finance Committee.
Thank you. This debate was perhaps the most partisan and vitriolic discussion I've seen since joining the RTM, much like a soap opera. And everybody enjoys a good soap opera. So in case you missed it, I will recap. The registrars of voters, Mary Hegarty and Fred DeCaro, introduced the item and explained what the purpose of the grant was in general terms, as well as describing the relationship with the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Before debate on the issue, one member moved to adjourn any further discussion on what is a very obvious thing for any reasonable member of the Finance Committee. As there appeared no clear consensus on whether to end debate, we took a roll call vote, as we are compelled to do, and that motion failed 3-8-0 with District 3 absent. Apparently 8 members of the committee are not reasonable. We then proceeded with debate, having spent numerous hours reading up on the issue, speaking with opponents and proponents, and coordinating visitors' schedules to come and share perspectives to inform finance. I collected questions from these various discussions. I usually have to prepare questions or our debate can stall and we are not as informed as we could be. Sadly, I had neglected to document attribution for each question, and one member objected to anonymous questions. A little bit ironic. I agreed to take personal responsibility for the questions. Further, I reminded the member that if any question were objectionable or triggering, they could object, and I would be happy to entertain such a motion. They further admonished me not to do this in the future, and I assured them I would take this under advisement. What were the actual questions? Do we have a policy governing grants? No. Do you consider board members of CTCL to be nonpartisan? Yes. Okay, then. Next, we spent significant time discussing the distinction between a grant and a gift. One member posited that since town officials apply for grants, whereas gifts are made spontaneously, we should not be questioning such a contribution. After a bit of back and forth, we asked Town Attorney Ahmad the distinction between grants and gifts. She indicated that indeed grants are typically applied for, but gifts are not. However, in this case, the grant was not applied for and offered to us spontaneously. And in any case, both grants and gifts must be approved by the RTM. Finally, she noted any town official could apply for grants, including the chair on behalf of the Finance Committee. Thanks to this discussion, we now know a lot more about the distinction or lack thereof between grants and gifts, and now you do too. A member next asked the registrars if a nonpartisan agency funded by Trump gave the town a similar grant, would they accept it? Registrar Hegarty answered she would not because Trump is partisan. She further stated that she would be uncomfortable taking money from an organization in which the Koch brothers were involved. Mr. DeCaro interrupted Registrar Hegarty to clarify that what she meant was that if the organization was nonpartisan, of course they would support such a grant. The discussion kind of degenerated from there. The debate was characterized by repeated interruptions and indelicate personal comments. One speaker interrupted repeatedly and I told them they were out of order. Another similarly interrupted repeatedly, and I reminded them that they cannot do that and they should let the speaker finish. One member called one of our guests a liar, which I assume is why the moderator cautioned people in this debate, which I severely admonished and apologized to our guests. One alternate member accused another of being a conspiracy theorist, which I ruled pejorative and asked the member not to do. The member repeated this several more times, and I warned if they could not follow the rules, they would have to leave the meeting to cool off. Although I'm not sure how I would enforce that, as I'm not a Navy SEAL. Finally, the vice chair asked the member to refrain from ad hominem attacks, and he relented. The debate and name calling winding down, we took a vote and approved this item 750. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next? Mr. Newman for the Town Services Committee. Ms. Jansen, will you be giving a report? Could you come up here, please, and queue up online?
Madam Moderator, members of the RTM, Fred DeCaro and Mary Haggerty, our registers of voters, attended the town service meeting to present items 10 and 11, which we took up together. They explained that they work with many similar national groups of registrars and election officials to both learn of best practices and share theirs. The town has applied for and received grants from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, CTLC, before. During the 2020 election, which occurred at the peak of the COVID outbreak, the CTLC awarded our town clerk's office $24,000, which was used for personal protective equipment and allowed both poll workers and voters to be at a lower risk of contracting COVID. In 2020, the CTCL awarded, during that grant period, 25,000 grants to both Republican and Democratic requests, turning down no requests. We discussed the possible uses of the COVID grant monies to offset the costs of early voting, security, handicapped access. We discussed the privacy of our data and what would be shared with the grantor. It was pointed out that the registrar's office has no private information and that all is available to the public. The voter roll info includes the names, addresses, birth, month and year, party affiliation, if any, and voting history, not who you voted for, but if and where you voted. This info is available for $35 to any member or any town person who asks. You and I, as elected officials, if we're running, we get it for free. To anyone, and you can get the entire state of Connecticut's rolls for $200. So if the CTCL is trying to buy our voter information for $500,000, they are overpaying. We discussed an alternative to accepting the grant and have the registrars ask the BET for the funding. It was pointed out that the $500,000 was equal to the annual registrar's budget in a national election year and not likely to be funded by a BET that has requested budgets to grow less than 1% this year. I could hear the nice to have versus need to have argument bubbling to the surface of a BET meeting. We asked the registrars if they felt there were any strings attached to the grant. They don't, and explain the safeguards. First, both registrars, Republican and Democrat, must agree on what to use the money for. Second, they must ask the full BET to approve of the spending and release the money. The registrars pointed out that if this body would like to also approve any spending, they would be happy to come before us for approval. That will be a motion before us later tonight by the L&R committee. It was pointed out that this is a grant to the town of Greenwich. Obviously, I'm wrong, it's a gift to be used by the registrars. Fred also said the registrars would be careful not to use the money on items that would incur ongoing or additional expense to the town, except maybe small items like the electricity to power some of the things. He didn't think there would be any other costs. We discussed the town attorney's opinion that we can and do accept grants from both government and private groups and encourage town departments to look for grants. Fred and Mary have attended many conferences sponsored by the CTLC and have never found it to be a partisan group, always dedicated to the sharing of information and best practices to run smooth and efficient elections. We included item 11 in our discussion, as it was a tuition waiver for our registrars to use and contribute to the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence. The registrars were asked if they felt they would be forced to share information with the Alliance. Fred showed us an email exchange with the CTCL. I highlighted that the Alliance will not and could not ever compel the registrars to provide a particular piece of information. Town Services had a lively, respectful, and complete discussion of the items. Before our vote, we were aware of motions that were proposed by L&R and Finance. We voted 6 in favor, 3 against, 2 abstained for the items. District 3 was absent. The 2 abstentions thought they needed more time to make up their minds. The no votes mentioned outside influence and a slippery slope if we accepted the grant. My vote was yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bergweger or Ms. Jansen, who's going next? Kip Bergweger, Chairman from our Legislative and Rules Committee. I'll wait for you to get to the podium before we put our little 5-minute.
Thank you
Okay.
for the 5 minutes.
Well, we're going to give it to you. There you go. Go ahead.
Again, we met on Monday to take this up. We also moved to take up item 11, and our discussion of item 10 and item 11 proceeded side by side. So I'm going to report what we have, and then that will cover both of these. We had assisting us Amina Ahmad, Fred DeCaro, Mary Hagarty, Karen Fasuliotis, and Lucia Jansen, all very important members of our community. We had a vigorous debate on these items. Some members expressed concerns about outside private funding for election-related matters, the source of the funding, hidden obligations that might be part of the grant or joining the alliance, and the potential for introducing bias into the Greenwich election process. Others expressed positive views on the grant, noting that the funds are for physical infrastructure and poll worker training, are not related to influencing election outcomes, come from a bipartisan, not-for-profit organization, and participation is at the sole discretion of our bipartisan registrars of voters. I will just go over a few of the points that were made during the debate. As noted, Karen Fasuliotis clarified that the matter had not come before the BET, and she noted that if the RTM wanted to have any say over how the funds were used, we should be included in the resolution, which we moved to do that, and I will bring that motion up at the appropriate time. Several people noticed that the grant raises question regarding private monies in election-related activities. There is no law that prohibits private funds, but 24 in Connecticut, but there are 24 states that have rejected this practice. One of our members who has worked as a voter assistant noted that the money is for infrastructure and poll worker training and not related to influencing election outcomes. He further noted that over a dozen lawsuits objecting to funding from the CTCL had been rejected by nonpartisan judges throughout the country, including Texas, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. It was asserted that the CTCL was originally funded by a $350 million contribution from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, and that point was raised several times. But Mr. DeCaros noted that that was irrelevant because those funds had been spent long ago and were not part of the current alliance. Another member of the committee noted that the board is balanced politically, and another speaker vigorously disagreed. Our registrars of voters spoke a number of times of their satisfaction with every aspect of their interactions with CTCL over the past 7 years. Every discussion they have experienced has been nonpartisan in nature and sharing best practices. It was noted by one of our members that the Greenwich is not really in need of these funds, and other municipalities might be better served if the money went to them. Another of our members noted that although our elections are well run, there's room for improvement in training and equipment in some areas based on his recent experience. One of our guests described this grant as a precedent setting, and this was not an appropriate way to do things. Another speaker spoke that the grant and the membership agreement are linked, and the agreement was more like a contract with obligations about providing data using tools and participation rather than a grant. But another of our members thought this interpretation was a stretch. So we are concerned with the statements about the RTM and wanting to have some say in how the money is used, and the concern that the Alliance might be using this grant or gift to influence and voting and extract information. We also made some amendments under item 11.
Thank you, Mr. Bergweger. Time. Thank you. I'll call you back for your amendment because Eleanor does have an amendment. Lucia Jansen, Chairwoman of the Budget Overview Committee. Oh, I'm sorry.
Your vote. People need to know.
Well, our votes were on the items as amended, which I will tell you about in a few minutes. But let's see. Item 10, we amended at a vote of 9 in favor, 1 opposed, 2 abstaining. And the item as amended passed 10-2-0 on legal order and 7-5-0 on the merits. Those voting no cited concerns about involving private funding in state and local elections.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jansen with the Budget Overview Committee's report.
Good evening. The BOC took up both items 10 and 11 with a combined vote. However, I will be reporting separately each discussion. At the meeting were the 2 town registrar of voters, the town assistant attorney, chairs from the BET Budget Committee and BET Law Committee. I want to begin by thanking both registrars, Mr. DeCaro and Ms. Haggerty, for their service and quality of work that has been delivered over many years with no complaints or issues with our election process or outcomes. The reason why your BOC took up this item was that we were struck by the unusually large $500,000 grant by a private nonprofit organization for our relatively small registrar of voters department that represents nearly their entire annual operating budget. The BOC discussed that in all 169 Connecticut towns, one of the most important government functions funded by local and state tax dollars is the implementation of free and fair elections. There has been good reason for tax dollars funding in that there are strict laws of protection, oversight, and transparency that does not exist with other source of funds to elections. Except during the extraordinary COVID pandemic, when Connecticut municipalities, including Greenwich, accepted funds for absentee ballots as well as mask shields and other COVID costs, it has never been the case private nonprofit funds our municipal elections. Ms. Ahmed, town attorney, confirmed the grant acceptance was put on the call because it met the basic town legal requirements for grants. However, Ms. Ahmed confirmed that currently the town has no written policy, guidelines, or criteria for accepting a grant earmarked for municipal elections. She expected if the RTM was to begin this new allowance, the RTM with other town leaders would establish a policy as we have done with other new grants. She confirmed that because there is no policy, if another grant toward elections, say from the Koch brothers or anywhere else, is presented, there is no policy or guidelines for acceptance or rejection. The BOC was eager to learn how the $500,000 in funds would be spent in operating and capital expenditures, since the explanos made no mention, as is customarily done, with a grant of this size with a lot of discretionary spending. The BOC learned the registrar voters had never even applied for the grant, and they had filled out a form to be selected a Center of Excellence with the new CTCL program, U.S. Alliance for Excellence, that was created 8 months ago with $80 million in new funding. Thus, the registrars had no typical application grant process paperwork with description of eligibility, detail of how the money will be spent, and so on. The registrars did respond to the BOC's request to list potential planned expenditures. They highlighted file cabinets, laptop computers, and equipment such as a new copier. There were no dollars detailed in the handout. The BOC discussed potential operating costs that might include consulting, travel, and software tools. The membership agreement listed all other kinds of expenditures I will discuss later with item number 11. Many BOC members expressed deep concern with the precedent to our elections that was being established with this grant acceptance of private nonprofit funds, and wanted to see the town remain with the long-held policy that only taxpayer funds be used for municipal elections. The temptation is too great, either left or right-leaning nonprofits enter and taint our election process, and the expenditures were simply not justified to the exception. The 4 BOC members who were supporters of the grant were supporters since they had conducted their own research on CTCL, their donors, board of directors, and felt CTCL was nonpartisan, neutral-based, solidly funded organization. Those BOC supporters felt accepting the grant had guardrails that could be put in place to make accepting the grant more acceptable. Some BOC members brought up the well-publicized controversies with Facebook founder Zuckerberg giving the private nonprofit money to municipalities, and the result of 24 bipartisan states enacting laws restricting or banning outright private nonprofits. DeCaro and Hagerty were asked by various BOC members what due diligence was conducted with not only CTCL, but the funders of the new program, the funders, but with the 7 alliance partners. The registrars responded they had not conducted that type of due diligence since they were satisfied with the terms and conditions described in the letter and the membership agreement. The BOC voted on call item number 10. 8 were against funding the grant and 4 in favor of accepting. The no votes did not want to establish a precedent of any private nonprofit funding municipal elections. The lack of a town policy for grant acceptance or rejection.
Ms. Jansen, it's time. If I'm happy to have you read your vote, but I think the text now you've gone over, and in fairness to our other chairs. So if you could just read the vote for item 10, that would be great.
Okay. The vote was 8 against funding the grant and 4 in favor.
Thank you very much.
I do want to note that the legislative and rules chair.
Ms. Jansen, you do not have the floor right now. Mr. Bergweger, I believe you have an amendment for item 10, correct? Okay.
As noted, there have been some concern as to how these funds would be used. On a recommendation by Ms. Vasiliotis of the BET, we move to amend the resolution by giving the RTM final say over the use of the funds. And we did that by adding to the last sentence in the resolution after the words, well, the words that the controller shall add to the appropriate accounts upon approval by the Board of Estimate and Taxation, and we added, and the representative town meeting. Our vote on that was 9-1-2. District 5 voted no as being generally opposed to the resolution, and Districts 1 and 11 abstained.
Thank you very much. That amendment being offered on behalf of a committee does not require a second. We do have a sign-up sheet on this, so I'll refer to that. Our first speaker will be Scott Kalb, followed by Rob Carter. If people can just sort of queue up, that'll make it go a little bit better. So Scott Kalb, followed by Rob Carter, followed by Cheryl Moss, and you'll have 2 minutes each. I'm sorry, hang on. You're ceding your time. Yes, Mr. Spilo? Correct. That's, I believe, what I was pretty clear with when I started this.
There's candy up here.
Yeah.
Is that for us or?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Scott Kalb. I'm from D7. I urge you to support the motion to amend item 10, which would give the RTM the right to review and approve the spending plan for the grants by the town registrars. There are legitimate concerns and questions about this grant. We have also read a lot of heated and accusatory rhetoric, and no doubt we will hear a lot more heated comments tonight. Right now, I would like to cut through the noise and all the heated comments and focus just on one simple point. If we have oversight from both the BET and the RTM to make sure that the grant funds are spent safely and securely, why wouldn't we accept these funds? Having a high level of oversight should alleviate any concerns about how the grant funds would be allocated. That is what the motion to amend item 10 is all about. There is already oversight for this grant. Currently, if the grant is approved, the funds would go through a normal BET appropriation process. Our registrars would submit a plan on how they propose to use the grant funds, and the BET would review and approve the plans. If we approve this motion to amend item 10, the spending plans additionally would come to the RTM for a review and approval after the BET is done. With both bodies overseeing the deployment of this capital, our colleagues on both sides of the aisle should be comfortable that the process is secure. It'd be very similar to the budget process. That's my time. We have 2 town registrars, a Republican and a Democrat, and they have established excellent professional elections in Greenwich. They've spoken eloquently about how they would use the grant money. For example, replacing old equipment and so on. I trust our highly respected registrars to be responsible, but I believe it makes sense to have this additional oversight process for both the BET and the RTM to alleviate any concerns that some of our members may have. Thank you.
Cheryl Moss to be, Rob Carter has passed. So Cheryl Moss to be followed by Beth McGillivray.
Good evening, Madam Moderator and members of the RTM. I would first like to thank our Registrar of Voters for handling themselves in a most professional manner in the face of what is some of the worst behavior I've seen since joining the RTM. My second thanks goes to Mr. Spilo for so adeptly showing us how our information is already available to anyone who wants to look for it. By sharing with all RTM members the party affiliations and political donations of a group of RTM members who support this grant, he has demonstrated that such information is readily available with a quick Google search. The grant from the CTCL does not give them any information they couldn't find on their own, were they so inclined. But the point is that this grant is not even for collecting or sharing data with CTCL. The claim that somehow our privacy will be compromised through this grant is pure nonsense. This grant is for things that do not influence elections. I'm getting to that. It's my next. As is stipulated in the grant information. This includes replacing old computers, updating technology, enhancing security, updating secure and safe storage for this equipment, and being able to meet state requirements for early voting. This is why we need to approve this amendment. In order to be absolutely certain that the money is being spent wisely, all expenditures will go to the BET and then the RTM. Nothing gets spent without the RTM getting a look at it. As for not needing the money, I offer as evidence the cuts the BET and RTM make to the budget year after year. For the last 3 years, the BET has imposed a level services budget. Who really believes that if the registrar of voters puts in a request for an increase in the budget over 1%, that the BET would approve it? Why haven't they already put in requests? Because they are told not to by the budget guidelines. I urge you all to vote yes to the.
Time, thank you. Beth McGillivray, to be followed by Bill Lewis. Is Miss McGillivray here? Yes. Are you Miss McGillivray? Are you passing? Okay. Bill Lewis, to be followed by Matt Deschamps.
I just wanted to point out why several people on the Legislative and Rules opposed the amendment and/or abstained, and that is that the amendment is largely meaningless. It's harmless, but it's meaningless. Once the funds are in hand, once we have them, of course, we're going to appropriate them pursuant probably to a vague budget code. For example, we might be asked to appropriate the funds to account 1205307, data processing and support, but we won't know who's doing the support and what sort of support. The point being, the amendment will give us just a false sense of control and doesn't address the fundamental problem: private money with lots of strings attached being pumped unnecessarily into our election process. And the strings attached are spelled out in all these bullet points in the grant agreement. So, you can go ahead and vote for the amendment. I probably will. Maybe we will unanimously, but don't be fooled into thinking it makes item 10 any less undesirable. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Deschamps, passing. Okay, that concludes our speaker list. We're going to proceed to take a vote on this. A record vote. So it should be the L&R motion to amend item 10. Okay, item 10, L&R motion to amend the first paragraph of the resolution. If you're in favor of that resolution, you would vote yes. If you're opposed, you would vote no, and the voting window is open. You'll have 1 minute. The voting window is now closed. Okay, I have the vote on the L&R motion to amend item 10. Those in favor, 183, opposed 24, abstaining 4. That item has, or that motion is carried. If we could put the sheet up. There you go. Okay, that brings us to debate, our general debate on item number 10. We have there's a 2-minute speaker sign-up limit in effect. The principal proponent, the proponent and principal opponent will each have 5. I'm not sure if Fred DeCaro or Mary Haggerty are, who is representing the registrar of voters? Okay. Yes, you will have 5 minutes, to be followed by Henry Orfis. You may have 5 minutes.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening. So I am Mary Haggerty, Greenwich's Democratic Registrar of Voters. Fred DeCaro, Greenwich's Republican Registrar of Voters, will speak, I guess, with the 2-minute
correct
time frame shortly. The last few weeks have afforded Fred and me the opportunity to meet with many of you at standing committee meetings and district meetings to answer questions about item 10 and item 11. You have had a chance to meet us and learn a bit about the work of the registrars of voters. One thing I hope you have gleaned is that Greenwich is well served by having a Republican Registrar of Voters and a Democratic Registrar of Voters, who set aside their differing political philosophies to work together to run the best possible elections for the town of Greenwich. I think this is a good spot for a plug. If you're intrigued and want to learn more about election administration, consider being a Greenwich poll worker. Something you may not know about me is that I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I hate to think about it, but some of you may be Mets fans, or heaven forbid, Red Sox fans. I feel confident the Yankee fans, Mets fans, and Red Sox fans in this body could argue civilly about the relative merits of Aaron Judge's hitting, the pitching of the Mets' Max Scherzer, and the Red Sox star Rafael Devers. Through civil discourse, greater depth of understanding and appreciation is achieved. Unfortunately, over the last week or so, misinformation has been shared about items 10 and 11, and we, the registrars, have been personally attacked. Brace yourselves. It could even happen tonight. When it comes to a vote on item 10 and item 11, I hope you can set aside the heated rhetoric that has surrounded these items and draw on the detailed answers we registrars have provided to RTM members' questions in 2 Q&As. Focus on the facts and consider the tremendous opportunities that are being offered to Greenwich by these grants. Your elected bipartisan election officials are excited by the possibilities of using these funds to work to make Greenwich's good elections even better. In our 2 Q&A communications with you, we have shared some of the ideas we are eager to get to work on. Be assured of 2 things. First, contrary to what you will possibly hear from speakers who follow us, these grants are not about private funding of elections. In Connecticut, the Secretary of the State and the state legislature dictate how elections are to be conducted in each of our state's 169 towns. The voting equipment to be used is determined by the Secretary of the State. The grants have no bearing at all on this fundamental election infrastructure. The second basic point is that funds can only be appropriated when both registrars agree on an appropriation. We, in effect, have a spending veto power over each other. And then the BET must approve the appropriation. And now the RTM voted to amend the resolution so that RTM approval of any appropriations is also required. Embrace the possibilities offered by these grants for innovating and improving election administration in Greenwich. Fred and I are not people content with acceptable. We work to provide our beloved town with the exceptional in election administration. Don't be content with the status quo. As a baseball sage who happened to be a Yankee put it, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Vote yes on item 10 and item 11.
Thank you very much. Henry Orfis is being recognized as the principal opponent, and he is representing a group of Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated voters who are opposed to the item. I believe he is online. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. Mr. Orfis, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you'll have 5 minutes. I don't know if you can see the clock on your screen.
I
but-
certainly can.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, fellow RTM members and Madam Moderator. I rise tonight to ask you to vote no on call items 10 and 11, regardless of the amendments that have been made or may be made to them. I believe our elections have been conducted honestly and fairly here in Greenwich. I think our town's registrars of voters have done an outstanding job over the years. They very well deserve the high level of respect that they have earned in our community, state, and now nationally. I personally have served as a poll worker, not in Greenwich, but in another state. And in my experience, very few, if any, discrepancies in vote totals were ever identified. So I agree with those members of our body who have stated that our elections in Greenwich are not corrupt. But what I want to ensure is that the voters of our town continue to view our elections that way. Now, it's very tempting to accept a significant donation for our town such as this. However, I think we must very carefully examine the possible long-term effects that accepting a grant like this from a public policy, not-for-profit organization such as the Center for Tech and Civic Life could have on our community. This organization has a stated mission to, I quote, connect Americans with the information they need to become and remain civically engaged and ensure that our elections are more professional, inclusive, and secure, unquote. As a not-for-profit organization, it can undertake this mission without giving money to registrars of voters and other elected officials who are tasked with the public trust of administering elections fairly, honestly, and legally. Now, one resident of my district commented to me, quote, if even 15 or 20% of our electorate would now question the impartiality of our election apparatus, I think there is almost no amount of money that would be worth taking. The current environment is too divisive, and we do not need anything else that makes us feel even more divided, especially as we all need to come together to work on local issues of common interest, unquote. I think this is very wise advice from one of our members. I understand from publicly available information that Greenwich spends approximately $500,000 per year to run its elections, whereas West Hartford and Fairfield, which have virtually the same number of registered voters as we do, spend approximately $300,000 per year on their elections. Also, I understand that our registrars of voters often spend less money than is allocated to them by the BET and RTM. So we are not underfunding the registrar's offices, and so there is no need to accept this grant from a financial perspective. To avoid the appearance of any impropriety or outside influence in our elections in Greenwich, I think we're better off providing the funding needed for the registrars exclusively from taxes paid by Greenwich residents or from state resources, rather than to make any needed improvements to the infrastructure from outside not-for-profit money. Funding our registrar of voters exclusively from taxpayer dollars will avoid the appearance of any outside political influence in our elections and will thus keep out of Greenwich the type of partisan fighting over election results that very unfortunately has arisen in other parts of our country. I also ask you to reflect on the tone of the discussions that have occurred in the last week in the various committees that have considered accepting this grant. I personally attended the Finance Committee meeting at which this was discussed, and this was the most acrimonious Finance Committee meeting in which I have ever participated. And I hope I never experience another Finance Committee meeting like it. Also, the language of many of the emails that have been sent to us in the last week through the RTM's email system is quite troubling to me, and I expect it is quite troubling to a great many other members of this body as well. Let's not let that sort of commentary that we have heard recently become the norm in our town and our RTM. Not accepting funds from this outside source is the best way to accomplish this. We do not need the money. We do not have to go down this path. If additional funds are needed by the registrar's office to comply with changes in voting procedures mandated by the state or improve operations, those funds will either be provided by the state or will be provided by the town. They always have been and always will be. So for the peace and harmony of our community, I urge you to reject items 10 and 11, regardless of the extent to which they may be amended, and to support a resolution that will hopefully be brought before this body in the near future, prohibiting the funding of the town's election operations through any source other than taxpayer-provided dollars. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fred DeCaro, you'll have 2 minutes to be followed by David Lancaster. Could you set the clock to 2 minutes, please? It shouldn't be 5 anymore.
I'm going to.
Hang on, Mr. DeCaro, let's just wait. Okay.
I was trying to jump it.
Okay.
I'm going to try and take 2 minutes to summarize 11 pages of Q&A and 15 hours of public meetings. Is there secret data? No. Are you sure? Yes. How can you be sure? Because freedom of information laws already make all of our work public. Is this a Trojan horse? No. If you use grant funds to buy new locks, does the grantor get a key to your office? No. Is there any consideration of using this money to collect ballots? No. How about tabulating ballots? No. How about reporting results of the current election? No. Who else has to approve use of any grant funds? The BET has to approve all appropriations put forth. What about the RTM? Your Legislative and Rules Committee has added an amendment to allow for that. Does this double the registrar's operating budget? No. Does this double your head count? No. Is this a bait and switch? No. Can you hire anyone you want to work on grant-funded projects? No. Why not? The town has a purchasing manual which governs the process for both goods and services. This includes putting items out to bid. Does this grant require you to use any specific vendor? No. How many calls did you make to lobby individuals on this matter? 0. Are you sure? Yes. How about emails? None. Why? As department heads, we have limited ourselves to answering questions asked of us. We respect the charter and the RTM and your policy-making role. Both registrars served on the RTM. Why do you return money to the town some years and not spend all of your budget? The bulk returned is usually for poll workers because we have not had a primary we budgeted for. We can't just repurpose that money. Are you being influenced to spend any grant money for a specific purpose? No. Have you ever witnessed partisan activity by the grantor or any partner organizations? No. Are you sure? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. DeCaro.
Thank you.
David Lancaster, to be followed by Ed Dudakis, to be followed by Stephen Meskers. So if any of those folks are here, just start queuing up. Mr. Lancaster, wait a minute. Let's get your 2 minutes up. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My fellow RTM members, I strongly urge you to vote no on items 10 and 11 tonight. In an era of widespread mistrust in election integrity, accepting private money to fund election operations at a minimum gives the appearance of improper influence. It doesn't matter whether the donation comes from the right or the left. No outside group should be given access to our elections. If the donation was coming from a right-leaning organization known for its integrity, it should be refused. Green Bay, Wisconsin found out the hard way what can go wrong. During the 2020 election, they accepted donations from CTCL and it ended very badly. The municipal elections clerk was illegally excluded from critical decisions and was asked to perform a number of illegalities, including curing ballots and signatures. She refused and appealed to her direct superior in the mayor's office, but was rebuffed and overruled. She finally resigned her position in protest rather than participate in these illegalities. That woman had a conscience. We would be foolish to think this type of situation can't unfold here in Greenwich in its own unique fashion. Given the almost daily new revelations of Silicon Valley media and their attempts to illegally influence elections, including those funded by CTCL, we should say no to this as another reason not to give money to this organization or this vote. If the Registrar of Voters determines that some of these programs offered by the grant have merit, normal budgetary channels should be used to secure the funding from the town. I urge you to vote no to preserve election integrity in our town. Stop this obvious Trojan horse. Thank you.
Ed Dudakis, who may be on the phone, I believe, to be followed by Stephen Meskers, to be followed by Frederick Lorthier.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM. I have full faith in Mary Haggerty and Fred DeCaro to run fair, transparent elections, but I urge you to vote against accepting these grants. 24 states, Republican and Democrat, have outlawed grants from such organizations because they don't want any risk that voters lose confidence in election integrity. The money from CTCL is not coming from CTCL. It's coming from those who donate to CTCL. As a 501c3, their donor list is not public, so there is no transparency. We don't know who is giving the money. It could be Mark Zuckerberg or Donald Trump or George Soros or someone else. I promise you it's not Ed Dudakis. Remember when we wouldn't accept an anonymous donation for 3 e-bikes until the donor revealed himself? This is exactly the same thing, yet more critical because it involves elections. Since we don't know who the donors are, accepting this grant is wrong. Now, we've seen a lot of emotions and passions over the past few days from folks on both sides. In fact, I've never seen such intense passion on an RTM issue before. Our duty is not to just protect the integrity of our elections. It is to protect anything that may cause people to question the integrity of our elections. Based on the passionate emails and calls, we now know that accepting this grant allows that kind of doubt of our elections to be sowed. That is not fair to our citizenry, and it is why we must reject these grants. Greenwich can easily afford more money for the registrars if needed. Please keep our elections safe and independent from any outside influence or perceived influence by voting no.
Stephen Meskers to be followed by Frederick Lorthier, to be followed by Andrew Winston. And just start queuing up if you hear, that would make it a little easier for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator and members of the RTM. I've spoken to you before. I've spoken to you in advocacy for Nathaniel Witherall. This evening, we voted all to approve a grant I was able to obtain from the state for the senior center. And now we're faced with a $500,000 grant. If you look at the infrastructure of the town, you look at what we've done, you look at the wall monitors to the rebuilding of our schools and the battles, the violent battles on funding our Central Middle School. And you turn around and you say, Nathaniel Witherall and our seniors don't deserve the funding. You turn around and say, but yes, in the voting, if they need extra funds, they'll be there. I trust the elected officials who, incidentally, are Republicans, to run an adequate allocation of the resources here. I urge that we approve this. The partisan bickering is not worthy of this body. It's not worthy of any of us. I've been elected by larger majorities each time because of my attempts and intentions for outreach. I urge you to support the measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Frederick Lorthier to be followed by Andrew Winston, to be followed by Dean Goss.
Madam Moderator, members of the RTM, and guests. My name is Fred Lorthier. I'm a member of District 12 and a Greenwich resident for 26 years. On January 10th, I contacted the CTCL to get disclosure documents regarding their finances and conflict of interest policy. My goal was to perform independent due diligence on the CTLC rather than rely on what is often biased news reported on the internet. I'd rather draw my own conclusions about the CTLC and not let others do that for me. I'm an accountant that is well-versed in not-for-profit financial reports and disclosures. I requested the following documents from Sophia Lehman of the CTLC: tax returns, audited financial statements, annual report, and conflict of interest policy. The tax returns are available, but was informed that the audited financial statements and conflict of interest policy are quote-unquote not publicly filed documents. Both Fred DeCaro and Mary Hegarty were included in the return January 12 communication. Ask them. In layman's terms, hiding behind the phrase not publicly filed documents means that we are not going to tell you and it's none of your business. Let me say that again. Hiding behind the phrase not publicly filed documents means that we are not going to tell you and it's none of your business. Lastly, it appears that there is no annual report, which I find surprising for an organization with revenue of $356 million in the 2021 fiscal year. This lack of transparency and cooperation is alarming. It's a big red flag that is high as this ceiling, as wide as this stage. This is the sole reason why I'll vote no. If you're on the fence about voting yes or no, there should be a reason enough to push the red button 2 times and vote no to our relationship with the CTLC. Thank you.
Andrew Winston to be followed by Dean Goss, to be followed by Louisa Stone.
Thank you. Good evening. Limited time. Just going to jump in. I think we heard from Fred, there's no control, there's no strings. This is an unrestricted grant. But with so much flying around, it's very easy to think that there's got to be something wrong with this organization. And forgive me for something that will sound naive, but it is very possible that it is exactly what it says it is. An organization that believes in investing in the voter infrastructure wherever it is. Now, is it possible the founders of that believe that will help one party, will help Democrats? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible that the CRC, the other think tank funded by the Koch brothers, and the states that have voted on this think it will help Democrats? Yes, that's probably why they're so pissed off. But there's no evidence of that. There's been study after study that getting people out helps both parties. And in a way, it doesn't matter. What we can do is look at what they're spending their money on. And when they opened it up to any district in the country, 2,500 districts in 49 states have given money. And so you'd want to see that they're giving money to GOP-led districts. And we have one really great data point, which is here. We are GOP-led. We have been run by the GOP, by the first selectmen, the BET, and the BOE for 100 years. So they are giving money to Republican-led enterprises. So I want to also talk about the 24 states. There's been a lot of talk about that. It's not quite 24, it's like 23, and only 21 of them really ban the Zuck bucks. It's kind of a little bit, I've read some of the bills, they're really vague, but it's an attempt. There are many things that these states in particular, that any state can do that we might not agree with. That's not good for us, that's not good for Greenwich. These states, you will find in the states that attempted to try to block the private funds, you will find all the states that have also banned abortion or restricted abortion. And you will find that they have looser gun laws than we do. You will find that they have very different gun laws than we do. These are different states. We are not these states. We are a different state with different priorities. We should not let their priorities set
Time.
ours.
Thank you. Dean Goss to be followed by Louisa Stone to be followed by Christina Volkwine.
Perceptions are really important. The public's perception of laws, rules, that sort of thing is extremely important to the functioning of our society, town, etc. I have a few kind of thrown in together comments from people around District 1 that I've asked them about this, and these are the kind of the things they came back with. Quote, if we don't need the money, why are we getting it? Another one, who's giving it? Why are they giving it? And why to Greenwich? No strings attached. I've heard that before. One guy claimed that his brother-in-law upstate, his town's voting system is quite a ways behind Greenwich, and they could use $500,000 right now to get where we are. So why are we getting it? We're the only town in Connecticut getting it. Now, I realize these aren't really factual comments in the sense of what some of the other people have talked about already, but the problem with all of this is if we accept the grant, the moment there's a close election, something doesn't go somebody's way, immediately they can, their perception of the integrity of the process will go down, and might be a permanent type of thing. In other words, with perception of the integrity of the voting system going down, so does someone's, belief in society, their voluntary, obeying laws, et cetera, et cetera. I know it's a little bit of a stretch, but we don't need the upstate press writing negative articles about our town. Like, for instance, why is Greenwich getting this money when town X could use it? We need their goodwill for our zoning affordable housing issues.
Louisa Stone to be followed by Christina Volkwine, to be followed by Jonathan Perlow.
Thank you. In recent years, the integrity of elections has been questioned in many places, but not here in Greenwich. In fact, we have been honored because we have one of the best places for elections in the country, thanks to the registrars of voters. So it's ironic that some are now questioning whether to accept this grant. Do they want them not to do better? Or don't they trust our registrars? There's a misconception that this would be used for elections. No, it's to provide better safety for our records, better access for voters, and more recruiting and retention of poll workers. Some say that accepting this grant would set a precedent, In fact, we have accepted funds from CTCL before. Every gift that comes to us has to go through the RTM, and in this case, every appropriation made from the grant would need approval from the BET as well as from us. This is an opportunity to make improvements for the registrar's office that cannot be included within the normal BET budget guidelines. We should be grateful and thankful and accept them. Thank you very much.
Christina Volkwine to be followed by Jonathan Perlow, to be followed by Peter Scher.
Fellow RTM members, many or most of you have served on the board of a 501c3. Many or most of you have had careers in finance and have done your share of due diligence. I served on the board of a 501c3 for 10 years. In the course of a decade, our annual revenue grew from $20,000 to $1 million. At the peak, we had a managerial board of 11 people and 8 employees, and we could barely keep up running a $1 million budget. We filed an I-90 every year, and I learned that nonprofit tax returns are in the public domain on guidestar.org. Anyone can look at them for free, and I looked up CTCL. It was founded in 2014, and for the first 4 years had an annual total grant revenue of approximately $500,000. In 2019, their grant revenue jumped suddenly to $2.8 million. The donor list, though, is restricted online. In 2020, the grant revenue jumped again to $354 million. The donor list for 2020 is also restricted online. There are no records online for 2021. CTCL gave out, in a 90-10 ratio to Democrat-leaning communities, all this money in 2020. Expenses were $335 million. With the paid staff earning $1.2 million in total and a board of directors of 5, of which 1, the president and executive director, Tiana Epps Johnson, still in charge, was paid about $111,000. $354 million is a lot of money passing through the hands of such a small and inexpensive staff. Tonight, we are in charge of doing due diligence on CTCL. For me, this organization does not pass the sniff test by its numbers and lack of transparency. For the record, as a conservative, I would not be in favor of accepting grants from conservative groups either, especially into our voter registrar's office. I hope you will join me in voting no on 10 and 11. Thank you.
Time. Jonathan Perlow, followed by Peter Scher, followed by Sandy Waters.
Thank you, Madam Moderator and members of the RTM. I rise to explain why I'm voting yes on items 10 and 11. Some have raised concerns about the private funding of election administration for fear of influence by outsiders. Given the stipulations of the grants, the enthusiastic support from the Republican and Democratic registrars, and the continuing oversight of how the grant will be spent by the BET and RTM, I don't believe that should be a concern. Personally, I believe the essential responsibilities of government, including elections, should be funded by taxpayers or the users of the services provided. But my assessment is that in this town, it has a long history of favoring low taxes over public spending, so not everything that many of us would like to see funded actually is. Our crumbling schools are a case in point. Accepting this grant is consistent with past decisions to use private money to enhance the public good. The aspersions cast on CTCL are without merit. The Anti-Defamation League labeled the conspiracy theories connected to their grants as one of the leading false narratives of the 2022 midterm elections. Using the grants to enhance election administration and infrastructure and to expand voter education has broad support in the community, with 260 residents, not including RTM members, signing a letter in favor of accepting the grants. For these reasons, I will be voting yes on items 10 and 11 and hope my fellow RTM members will as well. Thank you.
Peter Scher, to be followed by Sandy Waters, to be followed by Joe Solari. And before you start, Mr. Scher, someone left a telephone.
With a clock going.
I'm sorry, what?
With a clock going.
Okay. Well, if you're missing your phone, it's there. Okay, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I wasn't expecting to be here tonight, but I thought I'd add something that might help your conversation. I'm a close personal friend of Fred DeCaro's. I don't know Mary very well. I knew Sharon much better than I know Mary. Fred is clearly one of the most intelligent, capable, and competent people that I know, particularly as it relates to information technology and processes. He has done an amazing job to improve elections over time. Probably the best registrar, no offense, Mary, that the town of Greenwich has ever seen. I have the utmost faith in Fred's ability to manage this grant if you choose to accept it. But I'm not going to be real popular with Fred because I'm going to advise you don't. This isn't about Fred. I think Fred could absolutely do it. But look at where you are. You were asked to consider this grant on 18 days' notice. It's not much time to go through this. I won't go through how partisan it's gotten. It's a real ugly moment for this town and for you as members who've participated in that. And for those of you who are representing me, I hope you don't do it again. What's so disappointing about this discussion is it's all about this organization, the Center for Civic and Life. The question you should be asking is a policy question. Is should Greenwich allow private money into the most sensitive part of its government? And unfortunately, I haven't heard that that's the main question that you're debating. I was on the BOE. The BOE long ago established a clear policy for exactly this kind of question. I know because I was there when the policy was written more than a decade ago. And it was written by a bipartisan team of Republican and Democrats, both from the BOE.
Time. Sandy Waters, to be followed by Joe Solari, to be followed by Aiden Wasserman.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Waters, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Greenwich. I represent more than 300 members who are Greenwich residents. The most articulate voice of our democracy is when every eligible American is registered and votes in every election. The League has worked toward that goal for over 100 years. While we support issues that forward that mission, we do so within the IRS's legal framework for all 501c3 organizations. We never support any political candidate. To my email sent to you yesterday, tonight I add that the grantor, the CTCL, has previously donated funds to Greenwich without public comment. Like us, it is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit organization. Its mission is to connect Americans with the information they need to become and remain civically engaged, and to ensure that our elections are more professional, inclusive, and secure. It does not support political candidates. In fact, grantees may not use funds to promote any candidate election. Partisans have a different mission: possessing and exercising the power of public office. The RTM represents 40,000 Greenwich voters. My hunch is that they support a nonpartisan decision to make our elections more efficient and effective as the state legislature acts to implement early voting that they approved by a ratio of 68% in the November election. The League hopes you will accept the grants to make that happen. Thank you.
Joe Solari, to be followed by Aiden Wasserman, to be followed by Karen Fasliotis.
Thank you, Mrs. Moderator. Good evening, RTM. I have before you some 247 individual petition signatures against accepting these funds in Greenwich. These are collected over the past 22 hours by concerned citizens across Greenwich. A lot of people in Greenwich do not want outside people, outside money, outside funds affecting our elections. Do any of you remember that classic Brady Bunch episode where Greg Brady thought he was getting an incredible deal on a classic car that turned out to be a lemon? Remember his father, Mike Brady's words of advice to him? that when someone offers you something that sounds too good to be true, he said caveat emptor, buyer beware. It was good advice for Greg Brady, and it's good advice for us. And as Cicero famously asked, you always have to ask in situations like this, cui bono, who benefits? Who benefits from this grant? It's not a charity. Greenwich accepting this grant must somehow help this group and its donors and its mission and its advocates here this evening. And what precedent might this create by having national groups fund our local Greenwich election office? Accept all grants from 501c3s that call themselves nonpartisan too? As Democrat Joanna Swamley from District 10 said regarding the gift of those e-bikes to the Greenwich Police Department in 2020, the RTM must protect the town from unforeseen issues. As we all know, gifts come with strings, she said, implicit or explicit. The subject of ulterior motives or conflicts of interest or result in favoritism, even unintentional to the donee, she said. She said it was the duty of the RTM to ensure every...
Time. Aiden Wasserman to be followed by Karen Fasliotis, to be followed by Lucy Von Brockel. Is Mr. Wasserman here? It's Aiden Wasserman. I don't know. If Mr. Wasserman, if you're on the phone, maybe you could raise your hand and we could find you in the gallery.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 2 minutes, sir.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Aiden Wasserman. I am 16 years old and a resident of Greenwich. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of the grant that our registrars were awarded. I have volunteered twice to be a poll worker in our town's elections. Our elections are run professionally and smoothly, but there's certainly a need to update aging equipment and streamline processes. Greenwich voters overwhelmingly approved an early voting ballot measure last November. We don't know yet how many additional voting days will be added, but we do know that our registrars cannot manage early voting with their current budget. And we also know that they are unlikely to get the funding that they need through our BET, which has maintained a level services budget for 3 years. Our town has made public-private partnerships a priority for funding everything from our volunteer firefighters to our ambulance services. These partnerships save taxpayers money and keep our mill rates low. I urge you to support this nonpartisan grant that our elected registrars, both Republican and Democrat, need, and allows them to do the job that Greenwich voters elected them to do. Thank you and have a nice night.
Thank you. Karen Fasliotis to be followed by Lucy Von Brockel, to be followed by Brooks Harris.
Good evening. As you know, I'm Karen Fasliotis, and although I'm on the BET, I am speaking tonight as an individual who cares deeply about our elections process. There's only one important reason, one reason only, why you should not accept these funds tonight. And that is whether outside private money should be used to fund our election office, no matter how noble the registrars are, and no matter how good their intentions are. Your answer to that question should be a resounding no. Your vote tonight will decide forevermore our current nonpartisan election, your vote tonight will decide whether forevermore our current nonpartisan election office will be politicized and subject to the perception that elections can be bought, whether this statement is true or not. It's that simple. What's the old adage? Perception is reality. You only need to look at the debate tonight that has led you to the vote. And if you accept this money tonight, you'll see that my statement is true. I've watched as one argument declares that left-wing liberals with nefarious intentions are behind this grant, while the other proclaims openly that right-wing conspiracy mongers are those who are against it. This grant request has already started the politicizing of our elections by the debate and arguments that have been made at this body. And if this grant is accepted here tonight, there's nothing to prevent the major political parties for politicizing it further. And furthermore, you will have no reason in the future to turn down grants from other nonpartisan organizations, whether they be right or left, red or blue or green. You tonight have the power to stop the politicization of our election office by voting down this grant. You have the power to declare that our elections should be only publicly funded by the state and our town, free from outside monies. It's that simple.
Lucy Brown Brockle, to be followed by Brooks Harris, to be followed by Myra Clockenbrink.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So I'm an occasional poll worker, and I've seen with my own eyes how professional and conscientious our registrars of voters are. But I've also seen that there are many opportunities for improving voter and poll worker experience and increasing voter turnout. I've heard a lot of conjecture, but I've yet to really hear anyone describe in real terms how these grants could actually be used by the grantor to exert outside influence and undermine the integrity of our elections. We've already heard that, we have some oversight, the law department's looked at this, yada, yada, you've heard it all. There's no sensitive data to share and all of that. Is the concern that our registrars would feel indebted to the grantors and do something illegal on their behalf, like influencing elections? I kind of doubt that. Or that the resources and best practices shared among election officials will brainwash our registrars into participating in a plot to steal elections? I kind of doubt that. Or is it a concern that increasing voter turnout and voter engagement might tip the scales in favor of one party or another? It might, but honestly, that's not their intention. All of this discussion about state legislators trying to put a stop to grants like this falls flat with me. Most of these legislatures are partisan. The people who run them are politicians. What has more weight with me are the court decisions on cases brought against the grantor by partisan groups. These complaints have largely been thrown out as baseless by judges of all stripes. And the irony in all of this is that the vote tonight has involved outside organizations attempting to influence your votes. Please join me in ignoring the noise, hyperbole, incivility, and outside influences and vote yes on items 10 and 11. Thank you.
Brooks Harris, to be followed by Myra Clockenbrink, to be followed by Jane Sprung, I believe.
Thank you. We govern best when we find ways to work together and avoid partisan division. This is not an example of that. But I will give you two examples from my own experience in this body where it has worked. I worked with Democratic BETM member David Weisbrot on debt policy and capital budgeting. The BET's viewed debt policy, he considered all my comments, and even if he disagreed with my conclusions, he listened to me and treated me with respect. Similarly, when I ran a discussion for the Finance Committee on debt policy, he joined us, he made comments. I accepted every comment he made and I appreciated them. We didn't agree at the end, but we treated each other very civilly. And I think we educated the community and came up with good conclusions on this policy. Another example is on the Affordable Housing Trust Board, where I serve with former Democratic BETM member Bill Finger. He and I don't always agree on the best compromise between maintaining local zoning for our building and providing affordable housing. But we respect each other, we listen to each other, and we have empathy for each other. And so my message tonight is, why does this issue have to be so contentious and so vitriolic? There are people out there who are concerned with this. I urge you to find the higher ground. I urge you to feel empathy for the concerns they have. I urge you to vote no out of deference for your neighbor. Thank you.
Myra Clockenbrink, to be followed by Jane Sprung. Ms. Clockenbrink, if you could come to the podium, please.
So I'm going to have to wing it. But what I was going to say is that, thank you, Madam Moderator, and everyone here. No good deed goes unpunished. Fred DeCaro and Mary Haggerty have served our town in good standing and have been rewarded for it. They have done this through keeping good records, maintaining equipment, training poll workers, and they have done all this to secure our vote, the very thing that secures our ability to come here and talk to you tonight, give you our opinion, our democracy. And if they say that they need this money to continue their work, then I support and approve that appropriation to them, that grant rather. And I encourage you to support it tonight. Thank you.
Jane, I'm sorry? Did I hear somebody say something? Is there a question? Motion to call the question is a motion to immediately cut off debate and proceed to a vote. It does require a second. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. About 23 more speakers left. So has it been moved and seconded to call the question? Okay. As I said, a motion to call the question is a motion to immediately cut off debate and proceed to a vote. It is not debatable and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. And I believe you're going to look for, in our generic motion slide, it was number 26, which says motion to move the previous question. I don't know who offered that motion, though. Who offered it? Oh, Greg Zorthian. So the Zorthian motion to move the previous question. I'm sorry, do you have the slide, the appropriate slide? Are we good? Okay. We're going to see if this is right. Well, it doesn't say Zorthian. Mr. Zorthian, we'll add that in the minutes. We can't always, motion to move the previous question, which, as I said, is a motion to cut off debate and immediately move to a vote. It does require 2/3 to pass. The 1-minute voting window is open. The voting window is now closed. Okay, the vote on the Zorthian motion to move the question is 151 in favor, 55 opposed, with 4 abstaining. That motion is passed. We will now proceed to a vote on item 11. So 10, I'm sorry. Oh my God. Sorry. I'm already jumping ahead to the next one. So I do believe we have a slide for, it says, yes, and this is as amended. Don't forget that the legislative and rules amendment was approved earlier. So if we could put up that slide. Okay, item 10, $500,000 grant for the registrars of voted as amended. If you support this grant, you would vote yes. If you're opposed to it, you would vote no. The 1-minute voting window is open. The voting window is now closed. The vote on item number 10. Those in favor, 104. Opposed, 101. Abstaining, 5. That motion has carried. Okay, and there you go. Item number 11 now comes before us. May we have the resolution for item 11? Fred DeCaro, Republican Registrar of Voters.
Resolved that the town of Greenwich is authorized to accept a grant in the amount of $9,600 from the Center for Tech and Civic Life to pay for the Office of the Registrar of Voters to join as a member of the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence, a project of the Center for Tech and Civic Life. Such grant shall become an appropriation that the comptroller shall add to the appropriate accounts upon approval by the Board of Estimate and Taxation. It is further resolved that the first selectman is authorized to execute the attached U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence membership agreement.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Item 11 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. May we have the reports of the committees that considered this item? Mr. Harris, you're first. Go ahead. Go ahead. Brooks Harris, Chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, and thanks. One of the reasons.
Let me just, yes, we do have a 5-minute clock up on this. I don't know if we can get it up there for you.
Okay, I will endeavor to use as much of it as I can, but I'm not sure I can use the whole thing. Okay, thank you. One of the reasons that this item is separated on the calendar as opposed to combined is because we had a different vote in finance for this proposal, as I'll get to in just a minute. So the main proposal passed 7-5-0. This one did not pass, and there were several objections made by members of the committee. One member was concerned that it seemed untoward that they would charge us this amount of money, $9,600, but then they would give it to us. And, you know, mechanically, I guess it works. It's probably not illegal. I'm sure legislative and rules will probably tell us that. But it seems weird. I have not experienced that. And one member who voted for item 10 ended up voting against item 11 because they felt like there was something unusual going on there, and they didn't know what it was. They didn't accuse anybody of anything nefarious, but they didn't understand it, and they were concerned, and that was enough for them to change their vote on this item. There was another comment that was made in our meeting that when we join an organization, we're using our name brand in that organization, and the money really is not material, if we can be honest, but our name is materially valuable. So if we do agree to join this organization, we are using our name brand. And I'm sure there are many people in this audience who would be excited to do that and think that that will burnish our name. And there were people on finance who thought that maybe it would not burnish our name and that $9,600 was not significant enough for us to use our brand name there. We had members from other committees come and speak. Lucia Jansen joined the meeting, and she offered her concerns on this issue, and we listened to those. This discussion was a lot briefer than the discussion on item 10. I already went through in great detail, although I didn't use my entire 5 minutes on item 10. This one is even shorter, so I will use even less of my 5 minutes. This item failed. The vote was 6-6, and that's failing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Richard Newman, Chair of our Town Services Committee.
No notes. Town Services took this up along with item 10. There were a few comments. It's really a waiver of tuition. Fred did point out that they have in their budget money to participate and pay dues to other organizations similar to this, and it's their right to choose which ones they do. This encourages them to participate, but does not require them to participate. Our vote was the same as item 10. We did mean to combine it, but we sort of forgot. We were getting tired. It was 6-3-2, same vote as item 10. Thank you.
I have to now turn on my own microphone. All the money that we spend, you would think at least I could get my own. Somebody else would do it for me. But anyway, let's see. Kip Bergweger, LNR.
As I mentioned earlier, legislative rules voted to take up item 11, although it had not been assigned to us. One of our members asked a number of questions regarding our membership in the Alliance. Is Greenwich already a member? Not yet. Does acceptance of the grant require membership? Neither one is contingent on the other. The registrars would not have needed to come before a board to join the Alliance. They are members of multiple alliances. Would they join if they didn't get the funding? Unclear. Why have they not joined already? The Alliance was only established in May 2022. There was no way to join prior to being notified of the scholarship and the grant awards. Why did our registrars apply? Because they believe in bipartisan cooperation, sharing best practices, and improving election process infrastructure. One of our members commented that the membership agreement can be read as a private entity asking for non-public information and requiring other obligations, and asked if the registrars would be willing to amend the membership agreement to clarify such language. Mr. DeCaro noted that he had asked for and received clarification from the Alliance, and that the registrars were under no obligation to attend events, to participate in activities, or to share data. He provided copies of the email confirming that. Committee members noted that an email response is not binding. However, our registrars agreed that they would be happy to amend the membership agreement to strike language regarding provision of data and other obligations. Other of our committee members expressed concern that the registrars would be obliged to provide data, both confidential and non-confidential. Mr. DeCaro noted that election data is carefully controlled. Certain basic information is public and freely available, as been noted earlier. For non-public information, the registrars confirmed they cannot by statute provide confidential information to anyone and never would do so. We then made 2 amendments to the membership agreement in order to address the concerns that had been expressed. And then our vote on the membership agreement as amended was Legal Order 1200 on the merits 633, with districts D1, D4, and D5 voting no, and districts 6, 7, and 11 abstaining. Those voting no were opposed to private funds being used for election-related purposes. Abstaining members felt the amendment was an improvement, but cited concerns about the newness of elements of the grant, the need for a fulsome public debate, and the membership of the Alliance. One member noted that voting yes on the item agreed with the need for more debate. And I will make the motion to amend at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Bergweger. Lucia Jansen, Chairwoman of the BOC Committee.
Good evening once again. CTCL is separately offering the town an opportunity to become a member of the Alliance and enclosed a membership agreement. There are 2 options, a basic membership at $1,600 a year or a premium at $4,800 a year. Both Alliance membership options describe a variety of coaching, consulting on an hourly basis by Alliance partners. The Alliance partners are not named or described in the membership agreement. As DeCaro and Hegarty stated, they conducted no due diligence since they were satisfied with the terms and conditions. They did not examine the board of directors, the source of funding, the political orientation, the privacy policies. The BOC wanted more information with the membership agreement associated with the subsidy of the $9,600. In the membership agreement was a description for the registrars to travel out of state to Chicago, attend and participate in events to create standards, quote unquote, developed by the Alliance Center of Excellence. They did not know how many, if at all, they would use the consultants, frequency, or travel costs. However, it is their understanding that the $9,600 of the membership would cover these costs described in consulting, travel, and tools. The standards established by the Alliance, to their understanding, would be developed with the other 9 municipalities in the Centers for Excellence. The BOC inquired under the obligations to membership on page 2, the statement where it explicitly states that in addition to membership dues, the town is required to make non-monetary but highly significant contributions to the broader activities of the Alliance. The town is also expected to work with and use those 7 Alliance partners, consulting tools, and the aggregation and sharing of non-confidential data. DeCaro and Hegarty did not specify what was understood to be the significant programs, but emphasized that any data shared would be what is readily non-confidential available today. It was unclear to some why the clause needed to be in the membership agreement if CTCL could obtain the data without town intervention. Jansen had also emailed to the BOC a response from the town's chief information officer for his opinion on the various technologies discussed throughout the grant agreements. Tom Klein, the CIO, noted that he does not see any pressing voter technology needed that requires a large one-time grant. Once again, as earlier stated, the BOC voted 8 against this membership agreement, 4 in favor. And let me say District 4, 6, 8, and 12 voted voted yes because they believe CTCL is neutral and nonpartisan based on their research. There is a natural check and balance with bipartisan registrar's office, and the BET will have final say on how funds are spent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bergweger, I believe you have some amendments to offer for us. Okay. Hang on. We do have a public announcement. There is a black Mercedes. We don't have a license plate number, but it is blocking a car. So that person is trying to leave. So if you happen to own a black Mercedes, we don't have the license plate number. Maybe there are many of you, but anyone who owns one, if you could go out there and move it because somebody's trying to get out. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Bergweger, I apologize for that interruption.
Well, that's okay. It's not my car. The concern was expressed that the membership would obligate the town to several non-monetary obligations, and we made some amendments to address those concerns. Under the heading, the section of the agreement labeled non-monetary contributions, there is a sentence followed by 6 bullet points listing several contributions. The original read, centers, those are the centers of excellence, agree to contribute to the creation of these standards by, and then there's the bullet point list. We changed that to centers agree to consider at their sole discretion contributing to the creation of the standards. So with that language, it's up to the town and to the registrars. We then drop down to the last bullet point. It used to say sharing non-sensitive, non-confidential technical data and usage statistics. Legislative and Rules voted to delete that language, leaving a bullet point that just says providing feedback about any standards related digital tools offered by Alliance partners and implemented by the center. So it's only standards that the other members provide. The vote on that was um, 11-1-0.
Thank you very much.
And I move that we adopt those amendments.
Okay. Those amendments being offered on behalf of a committee do not require a second. Debate on the L&R motions to amend item 11. We do have a speaker sign-up sheet. There are 6 people that have signed up. It's, 4 in favor, 2 opposed. So it's not going to be particularly, you're going to hear, Mr. Lewis, I know you will ask this question. So you will hear 2 in favor, 1 opposed, 2 in favor, 1 opposed. So perhaps that will ameliorate an email later. Scott Kalb to be followed by Matt Deschamps. Mr. Kalb, okay.
Good evening, everyone. I rise to support this motion to amend item 11. It basically serves to qualify the membership agreement to eliminate any appearance that we may be obligated to provide either public or non-public data by simply striking such language from the agreement. It also states clearly that participation in any meetings, using any tools, or participating in any standard setting is at the sole discretion of our registrars. These are nice things to strengthen the agreement. I also would note that our registrars have the ability, as part of their mandate, to join any professional associations that they so choose. They can fund this out of their own budget and join, or they can also accept this scholarship, which is, it's really not even a grant, it's a waiver of the membership fee, and it's part of the award, really, that they got for their participation in being a center of excellence. So I think that this is a good, again, LNR is trying to help our colleagues to feel more comfortable about their joining this association and removing any obligations. And I urge you to accept this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Deschamps, to be followed by Lucia Jansen. Matt Deschamps is passing Lucia Jansen, to be followed by Mike Spilo.
I'm speaking as an individual, not as the BOC chair to comment on this amendment. It's a good start with the amendment by striking out the line on the data sharing, but it does not go far enough. And the reason is that with this membership agreement, core to the essence of the agreement is sharing best practices, flying to Chicago, disclosing materials, disclosing what we're doing, and more importantly, the idea of collecting new data. For those of you who are unaware, with FOIA, any data that is collected by the town, for example, when you sign up for robocalls and you disclose your cell phone number, that cell phone number can be obtained by any third party. So any data collection done by a department head today at Town Hall that puts it in the department can be FOIable. There is no data policy currently by any department head. I would highly recommend we vote against the amendment and vote against number 11 until this town has a data policy so that we do not collect any new data that can be obtained from a third-party source or tools that we are not completely familiar with. And since there was no due diligence on these new next generation artificial intelligence tools, this is to take us to a next level. I highly feel this town would be putting itself vulnerable with this agreement. Please support me in voting against this amendment and against number 11. Thank you.
Michael Spilo, to be followed by Beth McGilvery. And Ms. McGilvery would be our final speaker on this.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It seems some people didn't read my email. Our privacy protections in Connecticut are inadequate and antiquated. California, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and many others rightfully prohibit access to the data that I sent out. The joke is that we are giving this away for $200. You can be sure that Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon get much better deals for their data, and CTCL is very interested in getting more data faster. The specific issue is that our data is much too readily available in Connecticut, and this amendment is inadequate to protect it because All they have to do is request the information, and our laws require that it be disclosed. In Pennsylvania, the information is only available for public inspection during ordinary business hours. You can't just get it. This sort of personal information is very valuable and highly protected in other contexts. Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Visa don't provide a list of all your purchases free for anyone who asks. They sell it, and even then, anyone who wants access to this sort of data is required to provide criteria, and they get a list devoid of any specific information. We're proposing to hand this info to a firm that has Microsoft and Facebook deeply involved in their management and whose president was in the business of getting and selling this sort of information previously. The right way to do this is to require non-disclosures and no commercial use by anyone obtaining the data. So this amendment is very far from that. If you're concerned about privacy and the use of information, you should believe that this amendment does not address this concern. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure who's coming up to this stage to discuss right now, but anyone who's not part of the tech team really can't be up there. Okay, there's proprietary information up there about who's voting. You can see codes, totally unacceptable. So address whatever you need to address over there. What? I'm sorry, Mr. Spilo? There are other things up there on the back end that are not public, okay? Okay. Let's hope not. So that concludes, oh, Beth McGilvery, are you here? I'm sorry, is Beth McGillivray here? Is she here to speak? Yes, no? I'm sorry, what? You're passing, okay. Okay, so that concludes our speaker sign-up sheet for item number 11. I'm sorry, for the legislative and rules motion to amend item number 11, okay? So if we could pull up the vote, the slide for that. So item number 11, Eleanor, motion to amend. If you are in favor of the three motions, three amendments that Mr. Bergweger described in his presentation, you would vote yes. If you are opposed, you would vote no. The voting window is now open and you may cast your vote. I'm sorry, did the voting window close? Because the screen has, okay. So the voting window is now closed.
It's not the software, it's not.
Okay, I have the results on the legislative and rules motion to amend item 11. Those in favor, 131, opposed 60, abstaining 11. That vote has, or that motion is carried. Could you please put that up on the screen? Okay, that brings us to general debate on item number 11. I will let, I think we should at least hear some debate before we call the question. I don't know who made that. But let me just tell you a little bit of the landscape. You have 25 people that have signed up. There are about 14 in favor, 11 opposed. Almost all of them are RTM members. There are 21 RTM members and our 2 registrar voters and 2 non-RTM members. So we'll hear a little bit of debate and maybe that somebody will want to move the question after. Our first speaker is Fred DeCaro, to be followed by Bill Lewis. Yes, Mr. Broadhurst. Oh, okay. Yes, if you're talking in the back of the room, perhaps you just want to move out into the hallway and continue your discussion so people can hear the speaker who's presenting, and out of respect for the speaker. Fred DeCaro to be followed by Bill Lewis. Mr. DeCaro is being recognized as the principal or as the proponent, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Fortunately, I will not need all that time. Mary and I believe that our comments on the previous item are also responsive to this item. I would just add a couple of pieces of information. First of all, we included a copy of our application when we initially applied to inquired about the Alliance for Election Excellence in the Q&A, so you've all seen that. Our goal has always been and continues, was stated, as it was stated then, to always continue to learn from others, their best practices, and to share our own. There is no requirement that we adopt anyone's best practices. Certainly, we have things related to our bipartisan nature that we would think could well serve other communities and perhaps even bodies here within this town. The only other thing that I really wanted to say related to that was that the L&R amendments were sent to the grantor for the scholarship, and they have already responded back, and we sent to the town attorney a revised membership agreement where they accepted all of the suggestions put forth by L&R. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bill Lewis, who's representing the interest of those opposing the item, he will have 5 minutes.
Well, I certainly won't need that, but thank you. So I think the question is whether the L&R amendments that attempted to make some of the obligations that we would have not obligations makes item 11 palatable to us. And I don't think it really does, because the listed obligations
Hang on,
aren't.
Mr. Lewis,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just hold the clock. If folks could just sort of carry that conversation outside, it's becoming disruptive to those in the audience. I'm sorry, you may continue, and please start the clock.
So the listed obligations, the things we would have to do for this alliance, aren't really the point. The point is, I think, to get us through persuasion, through groupthink within the alliance, through bogus awards they might give out, to adopt their, quote, best practices, which likely include collecting all sorts of additional data on voters and voting tendencies. And then once we've collected the data, we'll have to give it up through FOIA if necessary to the alliance and its big tech dark money backers. The concern was expressed by our own town IT director this morning when he noted that the registers, quote, may unknowingly introduce new systems without fully considering the consequences of any new types of data collected, unquote. The examples he gave included collecting info on the time of day a person votes, for example. And if we did collect that info, we'd have to disclose it publicly, which raised the example he gave of a person voting and then receiving a congratulatory posting from Facebook. Enough of our data is out there. We should be very careful about getting maneuvered into putting more of it out there via alliances or anything else. But stepping back a bit, why for a measly $9,600 will we go down the road of having a Zuckerberg-backed, quote, center pay for our membership in anything? A membership, in alliance membership, if it's truly suddenly needed to have clean elections in town, why wouldn't we just pay for it ourselves? If CTCL pays for it, it wouldn't be out of line for the alliance to have our officials, just to make it graphic, at regional events wear name tags that say Mr. DeCaro or Mrs. Haggerty, Registrar of Voters, Greenwich, membership paid for by the Center for Technology and Civic Life. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to give credibility to a private advocacy group? And like with the $500,000 so-called grant, there's strings attached to this, visible or invisible. If someone pays for your membership in something, you have to give some priority to their phone calls, or you have to listen especially carefully to their viewpoints. Again, to kind of make it clear, if someone pays for your membership in your country club, you kind of have to invite them to dinner there a time or two. you can't claim to have an arm's length relationship. The point being, we need an arm's length relationship between our registrars and any private entities to be truly arm's length, and we shouldn't give that up for $9,600, I don't think. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we'll just go down in order. David, I'm sorry, Mary Hegarty, did you want to offer? You're going to pass. Okay. David Lancaster, passing. Okay. Christina Volkwine?
Thank you. Didn't expect to be up here. I expected 10 to be defeated. As we speak, some of our members are alleging their votes were not counted on item 10. Item 11, just because we ask for changes to this agreement with this organization, it's interesting Fred DeCaro say they approved the changes. They want their foot in the door with us. They're willing to bend over backwards to accommodate our reservations. If that's not a warning bell in and of itself, then we're not being very smart. You know, you all had a certain level of smarts to be Greenwich residents. I just really urge you to vote no on this. This outside money involved in our elections is a bad idea.
I'm sorry, Ms. Volkwine. Could you just please be respectful of our speaker back there? Thank you.
That's, thank you for your time.
Andrew Winston to be followed by Sandy Waters. I'm sorry, who's passing? Andrew Winston. Sandy Waters? Okay, if she comes back. Henry Orphis? I think he's on the phone. I don't know if he's on the phone, but he was. Okay. Lucy Von Brockel? Okay, okay. Brooks Harris? Okay. Scott Kalb? Nancy Burke? I'm sorry, Mr. Spilo, what is your point of order?
We seem to have a problem with the vote.
I don't.
Several people have reported, not me personally, several people have reported I'm happy to get them to speak, have reported that their vote was not registered on the screen or in the.
Okay, so we do have a representative from Meridia here. As you know, we don't revote. So I don't know what the issue is, and I am not right now at this moment able to verify that that is accurate. I don't know if there was operator error. I don't know that.
They claim
Okay. So, all right, just stop. Nancy Burke, did I call you? Did you want to speak?
I have a very nice letter to read from Peter Tessie. Sorry, I'm not accustomed to speaking. I'm certainly not prepared for this one. I don't think any of us are. I believe we have to revisit number 10. If the votes have not been tabulated, my husband is working remotely. He voted. I got a text from one of our saying he didn't vote.
I can't verify that right now.
I know, but there are 5 people here who clearly voted. They know what they're doing. And I think that we have to do something about this. I had a really nice letter from Peter Tessie.
You may
and
read that
Veronica.
letter, okay?
No, I'm
You
not,
wanna-
it's not relevant any longer. Well,
Okay.
maybe it is. I mean, it just points up why there are flaws in all sorts of technical data.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Mark.
Thank you. I'm sure you would want to make a decision, maybe revisit this and have a committee discuss this.
Okay. I'm sorry, was somebody saying something there? What is your procedure? I would defer to our law department, but I do not believe once you have announced the vote that you can retake the vote. Is a member of our law department here? I don't know. Is a member of our law department here who could answer that question, please? I'm not even sure. I don't know if we can do that. So, our town attorney, Barbara Schellenberg, perhaps you could answer this question. I do not know much more beyond this. There are some people who are suggesting that they voted in person. I don't know if it's in person or online, and they are suggesting that their vote was not recorded. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's operator error. I have no way of substantiating that. Some people are now asking to revote that item. Could you come to the microphone, please?
I think we're going to have to look into it and determine exactly, to the extent we can, what happened. There may need to be a revote. There might need to be a special meeting for that purpose. But I don't think we can make that decision right now without knowing exactly what the facts are.
So wait a minute, I just would like to say one thing. Nancy Burke, I can see on the screen that's up there that I have a screenshot of, that Duncan Burke did vote no. So I have him as recorded on that screen as being a no.
Yeah, I mean, is it possible to check right now
let's
to see?
Let's see what we have.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to put this up.
I'm trying to. Henry Marcus, did you check this? Oh, he sent me the screenshots of his votes. I've been kind of entering every vote.
Right.
Number 10.
Okay. So I think that what. Oh, okay. I think it's getting, let's just take a timeout. We're in the middle of 11. We'll leave this up. We will let people look at this, and then we will come back to address 11, okay? Yeah. I think she attempted to. I think she came up to but we don't know yet. I think she said, we don't know what the facts are. So yes.
Oh, you can't see the whole thing. You guys really, no one's got any glasses? The TVs show the whole screen. No glasses. Oh, your glasses.
Like, are you sure, like, they're not?
You know what? No. This is like the mystery, man. It's like,
And you looked all around because you're in the public.
I shouldn't have done, I can't see and I put them right here. Okay, well, if you don't have them, you don't have them. That's strange.
Alexis, can you make an announcement and see if someone picked up Dane's glasses?
Hi, I'm up as a no vote. I'm on the screen that's not having.
Not having voted.
Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the screen, take a picture if they want, so that we can continue on with the business of item 11? I don't know,
So So we're checking to see, I mean.
Jenny, you have, I think you have the screen cut off on the left.
I came up.
You can't see the full screen.
Wrong button, I don't know. Okay,
But not during, not before the vote.
so, no, I think we can get through it. Let's just,
No, I was not aware until.
I've been here, so I should have voted for all of them.
so, wait a minute, wait, Steve.
Maybe there. All right, so I wouldn't vote no. I'll tell
Is
Alexa.
the screen showing us all the names on the left?
So,
It's cut off.
John Conlon is great.
okay. I don't know that. So if everybody could just sit down, if we could go back to our seat and sit down. Okay, so if we could just go back to our seats and sit down, please. And we'll figure out next steps. Okay, now, where we are right now in this issue is we are in the middle of going down the speakers who've signed up for item 11, okay? Mr. Katz, you had a motion that you wanted to offer, or no? Okay. Your motion is to, could you come to the podium, please?
Since item 11 is related to item 10 and there's uncertainty about item 10, I would like to make a motion to postpone item 11 to the next meeting until item 10 is resolved.
Okay, so that motion has been moved and seconded. Any debate, or do you just want to vote on that? Okay, so we're gonna create a new slide. Okay. And that slide is going to say Katz motion, K-A-T-Z, motion to postpone item 11 to the March 2023 meeting. It does require a majority to pass. Okay, so the 1-minute voting window is now open, and you may cast your vote.
Here's some voting.
Not now, I'm talking about the vote number 10. Well, you have to
Time? Okay, I have the results on the motion to postpone item 11 to our March meeting. Those in favor, 117, opposed 77, abstaining 0. That motion is carried. So we will pick up that item at our March meeting. I believe that concludes our business. I think the town attorney opined, and perhaps she would like to come up again. I don't think we can substantiate that yet, but perhaps she could come up and reiterate what she said. I don't know. I think that the town attorney needs to opine on that, please.
Right. Again, I don't think we can answer that question now. We don't know all the facts. We're hearing too much now from several different places. People are being texted, et cetera. I think anyone who claims there was an issue with their vote needs to let the town clerk know. And also whether you were voting in person or voting from home. And then we have to evaluate the situation and decide how best to handle it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what, Ms. Cirilli? Why don't you come to the podium, please?
I think it appropriate that the town clerk send out a message to the body regarding item 10, perhaps all of the amendments to 10 and 11, how people voted, whether it be a yes vote or a no vote. Accuracy is what's counting here, regardless of your position.
So you would like what? You would like the
I would-
town clerk to print out?
No, to send a message to the body that to please communicate with her how they voted.
But
So how else are you going to compare?
You understand that you can't do that because if you don't have verification how somebody voted, they could potentially switch their vote. So I think we have to.
Well, maybe that's why we need to do a redo on item 10. Technology is only as good as its accuracy.
Okay.
It's not about changing votes, it's about recording the vote properly, which apparently wasn't done. So I think everyone, she should send this to everyone whose vote has not been recorded.
Okay. I think we've heard from the town attorney. We're going to try and identify what happened and get more facts. And until then, that was the last order of business. So the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.